They were able to shape the Supreme Court to support their views through executive orders. It takes a pretty strong supermajority to make something that harsh happen. For Bitcoin, on the other hand, trying to stop something like that from happening requires some level of bipartisan support or mixing things up. This will protect you against some of the worst outcomes, like trying to ban Bitcoin or other things like different opposition to the idea of privacy in general. I believe that educating various groups of voters and political party members will at least lower the chances of passing very bad laws. On the other hand, you might be able to get some good laws passed as well. Lyn Alden is a great economic analyst and the founder of the Lyn Alden approach and has a background in both business and engineering. Alden always sees the problems with the current world financial system and how badly we need a better one right away. But Alden, a supporter and Bitcoin fan, is sure that Bitcoin is the best option to the debt-based fiat system and that nothing else comes close. Alden is sure that Bitcoin's strong network, decentralized system, and set supply will help solve many of the world's financial and economic problems. The decentralized system protects people's rights from tyrannical regimes or even democratic ones that have been knuckled. The fixed supply stops governments and companies from printing more to satisfy their never-ending greed. In a recent chat with a progressive Bitcoiner, Alden talks about the many problems with fiat money and how the slow move to Bitcoin will help the world heal. To see more videos like this, please like this one, subscribe to the channel, and set your alerts to post new videos. That's why there are people with a wide range of skills in the Bitcoin environment because it is big and varied. That's why some people are just building, right? They work in technology, you know. But I think there are really valuable spots for people who are interested in both Bitcoin and politics to do their best to make a difference by either teaching people about Bitcoin or trying to stop bad laws that would make it harder to be in Bitcoin or use Bitcoin, among other things. That is something I think is useful. And I think Bitcoin is strong, but I wouldn't say it's unbeatable. And then, even if something was unbeatable, other very strong forces could slow down the time it takes for it to get bigger. So, if you don't want that to happen in your own country, I think it's important to be involved in politics, or at least for some people in the environment to be involved in politics. Of course, that's one reason I try to spread Jason's case for Bitcoin. That kind of work is worth something. I like that there is more of that because, as Peter McCormack said, that's the most important book for conservatives. I would add to that by saying that it's like protecting your left wing, right? If you only talk to Republicans about Bitcoin, you might run into trouble with people on the left who don't understand it or are against it. On the other hand, if there are progressives who understand and value Bitcoin, that's like having support for the network from both parties. It can also make things easier for people who use Bitcoin in that setting. Overall, I think that's just good work that needs to be done. Some political situations are very extreme. For example, in the United States, it was against the law to own gold from the mid-1930s to the mid-1970s. In the land of the free, you couldn't own a safe yellow metal, right? In many ways, they saw that as the biggest threat to the dollar. That's why they wanted to depeg the dollar and then free the dollar. The dollar was losing value, so if you want to do some kind of financial oppression, you need to stop things that are bigger than you, right? That meant they didn't have to stop money from going to a weaker country, but weaker countries did have to try to stop their own money from going to the US. The only thing the US really had to stop was money from going into gold. That was only possible, though, because one political group won so badly. To be exact, they used to run about 70% of Congress, and when they made these executive orders, they were able to shape the Supreme Court to fit their views. It takes a pretty strong supermajority to make something that harsh happen. However, if you want to keep something like that from happening with Bitcoin, having support from both parties or mixing things up a bit protects you against some of the worst possible outcomes, like trying to ban Bitcoin or other things like different opposition to the idea of privacy in general. I believe that educating various groups of voters and members of various political parties will, at the very least, lower the chances of passing laws that are very bad for people. In the background, you can also get some good laws passed. Unfortunately, I don't think the capital gains tax situation will change for a long time. One of the main ways that countries keep their own little currency bubble, their own little currency monopoly, is by taxing only their own currency and capital gains taxing everything else. In that case, I'd like other currencies to not have capital gains tax, which means that Bitcoin should be able to be spent without being taxed on capital gains. In reality, though, I think that will only work in the long run. So when I think about politics, I think more about, okay, what can be done first to stop the really bad things from happening then? How can you start moving forward with some kind of law that might be more helpful? The U.S. national debt hit an all-time high a little over a month ago. On September 16th, it was an amazing $33 trillion. It's now $33.67048.8 in less than 7 years. Dollar deficits will likely hit more than 10% of GDP. There are a lot of huge unfunded liabilities in the U.S. that are growing very quickly. The country also needs more money to pay for defense decarbonization and any other cause the U.S. government decides to work on in the next few years. The Treasury Department also plans to issue more $9.2 trillion in debt in the next few months to pay for the huge interest costs and rising deficits. The trouble is that there aren't many buyers from other countries left. The U.S. banks, which usually buy a lot, are still losing money on things they bought in the past. This means that fewer people want to buy us bonds, so the prices keep going up to get people to buy them. This means that our deficits will grow, we will have more debt, and interest rates will go up even more. Our debt is getting worse and worse, and it could swallow us all up. This is just one reason why Alden and other people who believe in good money want to move on to better things. Let's talk about it again. The bigger the network, the more people use it, and the more benefits they see from using it. As you say, the tide shifts, and the more people that use it, the more popular it would be to have a bill that says, for example, the first $100 worth of Bitcoin transactions are not taxed. If you ask people about that now, most of them wouldn't care because most of them don't use Bitcoin. That is, until that number gets much higher, that becomes more of a choice. It's also possible to be an intransient minority, which means that you don't have to be the majority to get your point across. All you need is a big enough voting bloc or a group of people who really care about the issue pushing it pretty hard. So it becomes more and more likely that Bitcoin will become a reality once a much larger minority of Americans say that it is one of the most important things to them and that they are talking to their politicians about it. This doesn't mean that half of Americans have to be interested in Bitcoin. I believe that will not happen for a number of years. So far, we've seen that smaller countries are more willing to try new things because they sometimes don't have much to lose. Yes, they said, well, we're going to take a chance and use Bitcoin. Some countries like city-states that are already very rich say, okay, we'll be a place where Bitcoin and crypto companies can come and have a little less strict rules. We're also going to try out or adopt some new tools. We're also going to record any possible taxed income that may come from, making the place a better place for those to live. When it comes to the United States, I think it will be one of the later markets to adopt it because of its focus on its reserve currency and the strength of its capital markets. This is because incumbents rarely change, even when it would be good for them to. Usually, newbies are the ones that shake up big companies. There aren't many blue chip companies that are always shaking things up because they get too comfortable with where they are. There is a risk in that, of course. If you want America to do well or your big company to do well, you want them to mess with you. That's how you stay in the game in the long run. I agree that the U.S. should be more involved with Bitcoin, but I also think that since we are already the leader, we probably won't be able to get ahead of the rest of the world. Of course, the elites are the ones who are happy with the way the present system is set up. The current system is usually liked by the people in charge of businesses, the government, and other powerful groups. I don't think the acts are very helpful. Based on what he's done, I think he does like Bitcoin more than other cryptocurrencies, but I wouldn't say that he's a big Bitcoin supporter either. He may be thinking about how to move up in his job in the current government, which is not very friendly to Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies, so